I had a moment of panic the other day in my relationship because I had forgotten an important truth that we forget to talk about when it comes to love. So, an issue came up in our relationship that's been there since like day one. But in the moment, my first thought was like, oh, why are we here again? It made me feel like I had failed somehow. And for a second, I was even questioning like everything I shared on this channel and coach clients with when it comes to relationships. And also, it felt like my husband and I hadn't grown as a couple. But then I remembered something that changed everything. The truth is, happy couples don't solve all their problems. They just learn how to love around them. I love that so much. Thank you, ChatGPT, for wording it that way. But that's really what happens with couples who are in it for the long haul. So I want to talk about this with you today to give you perspective on those issues that just have you banging your head against the wall, and just as an important reminder to myself also. Hi, gorgeous. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Mireille Nicole, and I'm a relationship coach who's all about guiding you towards your happily ever after and helping you tackle the tough stuff in love with grace and wisdom, which is something I had to walk myself through just recently. So here's the thing. Not all problems in your relationship are going to be resolvable, and that is okay. What inspired me to do this video is I was in a Facebook group recently, and someone had asked the question in the group, is it possible to have a relationship with someone who has different values, different beliefs, different thought systems or political views than you do? Is it possible to be in a happily ever after with someone who is so different than you on so many different levels, or on some fundamental levels maybe, right? So a lot of people were commenting in the group saying, no, it's not possible, and sharing stories about how they clash with either their ex-partner or their current partner. Well, I guess in most cases, it must have been ex-partners. And I just responded and I wrote, I believe that anything and everything is possible in love, because I do truly believe that. But that got a lot of backlash. I got a lot of interesting responses to my comment on that post. And the thing is, I've overcome so many different challenges in my love life, and I currently do overcome challenges with my husband, and that's how we grow together as a couple. So I tend to be that hopeful, optimistic relationship coach or person in love, because I know that, when love is truly there and effort is put in and you have the skills and you have the desire and you have the dream, you can make most situations. And obviously there are cases where there are buttholes out there, or there are relationships that are super toxic that you definitely do not want to settle in. But I do believe there is a way to turn things around in your relationship if things are going rocky or things aren't just quite the way you imagined them, right? When you were a little girl and dreaming about your wedding day. And this topic really strikes home for me because my husband and I tend to be opposites. And you know what they say, opposites can attract. If you're familiar with the work of John Gottman, or you've read the book, The 7 Principles for Making Marriages Work, you'll know that apparently through their research in the love labs, they've discovered that 69% of problems in a relationship are going to be unresolvable, or perpetual, as they say, or perennial. They're going to keep blooming every now and then throughout the course of your relationship. And so really your job is going to be to determine if you are ready to move forward with those unresolvable problems. Is this a relationship where you feel strong enough about that you are willing to work around them or love around them? Because at the end of the day, you choose a partner with a set of problems that you are willing to work with or grow through. If you know my love journey, and I have a whole video about it on this channel, you'll know that I was divorced and I am now remarried. And in both of these marriages, we've had, unresolvable problems as a couple. So me and my ex-husband, and me and my current husband. And some will say, or maybe you might think, hey, the grass must be greener on the other side. And maybe it is greener on the other side, but there's still going to be, dandelions in there. I love dandelions. I shouldn't paint them as something negative, but all that to say, there's still going to be issues that you'll have to overcome. That's still good, because that is what's going to help you grow together as a couple and increase the satisfaction in your relationship, right? Because when you can actually come to some sort of compromise or middle ground, or even get, maybe not resolve it, but get, maybe a step ahead, or tackle it better as a couple, that's going to increase your satisfaction together because you will start to see that you guys can overcome anything. So how do you know if a problem is unresolvable or perpetual? Number one, it feels like you keep having the same argument over and over again. And that's what it felt like in my relationship recently with this example that I was sharing. Well, I haven't shared the example yet, but I will talk about a couple of the unresolvable issues in my own relationship to help give you context and understand where this is coming from or what that might look like for you. Number two, you have a hard time staying optimistic or positive about the issue. Now, I'm not saying that you're supposed to like the problem or the issue that keeps coming up, but you'll want to be able to keep some sort of hopefulness through it, that it's not going to destroy your relationship or that you guys can keep moving forward. So if there isn't that optimism or that positivity, you might be in that unresolvable problem zone. Number three, the issue just becomes even more and more divisive over time. It becomes more polarizing. It puts you guys even more at odds one against the other. And number four, compromising feels like you're settling or losing yourself, which obviously you don't want that to happen in your relationship. You don't want to have to settle and you don't want to lose yourself because that's not going to be fulfilling. And quite frankly, that should not be your standard. So just going back to my example, so I would say there are two big unresolvable problems in my current marriage. And it sounds weird saying current marriage, but I always say it that way because I had a previous one. My current marriage, my happily ever after, I should call it. And one of them is that we're a blended family. And I shouldn't call it a problem or an issue, but that is just something that we deal with that does sometimes bring up really difficult emotions, that brings us into conflicts or really highlights our differences sometimes. And we have an older child that he brought from a previous relationship that is now an adult, and our two younger ones are growing up now and getting to that stage again. And it just feels like we're going back in time, where I had this impression that, this time it would just be so much easier going through this phase because we went through it once, but certain things have been popping up again. And not necessarily because we didn't deal with it properly the first time around. Like, obviously, there are things we could have done better, I'm sure, and I know for a fact, but also because these are just our circumstances. It's our reality. And in a way, these are the cards that were given to us, and we get to play them, and we get to play them again. We're at round two of the card game. And I think part of it is when this unresolvable issue came up again in the relationship, is that I wasn't in the strongest emotional state. So you'll see on my channel, I talk all the time about emotional detachment, emotional leadership, emotional intelligence. I have a whole course on the topic. You can download my free 3 steps to emotional detachment cheat sheet. I'll put the link in the description below because that is just so important to be first and foremost in a strong emotional state. So I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't there, and that was the first thing that I did wrong. And secondly, that this was just an issue that was going to come up. And a lot of times these issues, these unresolvable problems in the relationship are things that can last for maybe 5, 10, even 15 years, maybe longer in your relationship. I'd say our second unresolvable issue is something that, could theoretically be in part of our relationship for the rest of our relationship until death do us part. But what I realized is that we had grown and we weren't tackling the issue from the same perspective and with the same skill level that we were before. We have actually grown through it. And even though it came up again, we were tackling it in a much more calm, accepting, and rational space this time. And that's how you work through your unresolvable issues. The first thing is going to be acceptance. And acceptance is so important in so many different ways in your relationship. But in this particular context, acceptance is going to be about understanding that there are going to be certain problems or certain challenges that you deal with that are probably going to be there a very, very long time in your relationship, if not the whole time. Or they could go away also, but they're likely going to be unresolvable. The second way to deal with these unresolvable issues is to really understand the dream behind them. Like, what I came to realize also is that my husband and I have we have our own dreams. I shouldn't say they're different because I'm coming to see that they're not very different. They're kind of the same dream. And maybe our way of going about achieving that dream is different. But we both have very strong dreams behind how we envision or how we picture our blended family life and our relationships with each of our stepchildren and how we function together. And when you can understand the dream, that's when it becomes easier to make the compromises. Or I don't even like the word compromise, compromises, but finding common ground, which is the third step you want to look at. The third thing you want to do to overcome or love around these unresolvable problems. You want to find, okay, well, what feels good for me? What feels good for him, for your partner? And what can we do to balance this? And maybe it doesn't solve the issue, and it's probably not going to solve the issue completely, and it might not feel 100%. Well, hopefully it feels good to you, but it's not going to be necessarily 100% how you would do it, but it's going to allow you guys to move forward. And finally, you want to be able to show affection and empathy, especially throughout this, and maybe even a bit of a sense of humor. So I was talking about John Gottman earlier on, and when they did the research, the happy couples that were able to navigate successfully these challenges without succumbing to them, is that they were able to use humor in there. So I wasn't able to use humor in the situation I just shared, but I used a lot of empathy, and then I went and leaned towards affection also. So it's going to depend on the circumstance. Don't worry about getting all of that in there. And the last thing I wanted to share about this topic is this whole idea of compatibility, because what I'm coming to realize is there can be a lot of confusion between compatibility and unresolvable issues in your relationship. Like some of these things, like even the things I listed earlier, like, values and beliefs and political views or spiritual views might not be a compatibility issue, but it's just one of those perpetual, perennial problems that are always going to be there. And again, you get to choose if that particular challenge or problem feels good enough to still be in that relationship with this person. So is it really a compatibility issue, or is it really just an unresolvable issue that you either are or aren't willing to love around? So I think there's a lot of overlap there, and that's just something to be mindful. I don't think there's like a black and white binary response to that, or right or wrong response to that. So I think there's just a lot of overlap there, and it's something to be mindful of. It's not like a straight answer, because remember, you're entering into a relationship with someone, like a different human being who's going to have different opinions and beliefs. And I share a lot on this channel because I have health videos too about how my husband and I, like at the end of the day, we both believe in health. We have that same value and belief, which should make us compatible, but how we express that belief or that value can be very different and could make it seem like we're not compatible. So all that to say that things aren't always straightforward in love. And when it comes to compatibility versus unresolvable issue, I just really invite you to lean into your intuition and what your gut feeling is telling you. Because I think when it comes to compatibility or who you should be with, there's a big component that is going to be hard to describe and hard to explain because it comes from an emotional place. And when it comes to love, most of the time we're talking about emotions, and it's not always going to be logical. And yes, logic is important, but we have to also remember our heart. And that's a whole other rant. But for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to highlight again that there are going to be issues in your relationship that are not solvable necessarily, and you learn to love, or you choose to love around them and grow through them as a couple. So next time there's an issue in your relationship that just seems to come up again, instead of being disappointed or upset that the issue came up again, really focus on how you can tackle it differently this time, and really look to see how you guys have grown or not this time, and really focus on that instead. Now, if you're finding that you're in arguments or problems are coming up and you're not making any progress with your partner, reach out to me to get clarity and coaching support. And if you want a list of steps to create lasting love, make sure to download my relationship success checklist. I will put the link in the description below. And remember, you're not failing in your relationship because the same problem is coming up again. It's totally normal, and it's part of being in a real relationship. I'd love to hear from you. What's a perpetual issue in your own relationship? Let us know in the comments below. Let's start a discussion on this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and make sure to watch this one next.